Move on to plyometrics. Nice little stick figure guy. The only reason I've got that up there is to remind you to train in the transverse plane. We're talking about everything in our world is horizontal and vertical, pretty much. But triple jumpers, and especially high jumpers, have a lot of lateral involved in the performance of their event. If everything you do is in a straight line, horizontal, and it's a straight line vertical application, are you really preparing that athlete for the rigors of their event? Larry, who just spoke a few minutes ago in that plyometrics panel that we had on Track Coach, said time needs to be spent on learning how to hop, skip, bound, and jump and land. Kids can't walk, talk, and chew gum nowadays, because when you drive through a neighborhood, they're not playing, they're on Nintendo. Their thumbs can't get them over a bar, their thumbs can't get them into the pit. Okay? Their posture's terrible because they're slumped in the couch. So we do a lot of remedial work on the college and even the post-collegiate level because what we get is less than optimal. You can be strong without fast. There is such a thing as too much max strength. And the connect chain works best when all muscles are properly trained. You have agonists and antagonists, you've got to look at them all. Period between eccentric and concentric contractions is called the coupling time, which is referred to right in that little spot there, if you can read that chart, as the coupling phase. You see the initial eccentric contraction down below and then dead on. Bosco suggested that fast twitch dominant exhibit better performance when the eccentric phase is shorter, range of motion is smaller, and coupling time is short. Okay? So now, that being true, he also says the opposite. Slow twitch dominant athletes perform better from longer eccentric phase and greater range of motion. Anybody want to take a shot at a jumping event in track and field where that might be most applicable? Some of you older folks remember the phrase, speed floppers and power floppers in the high jump. One representing one representing the other. The slow twitch dominant, longer eccentric phase, greater range of motion will be that dude that comes in, puts on the brakes, gets real low, and regenerates out of the hole. What we're finding now is, especially if you look at the Europeans now, they seem to be, and again, this is my, I've never been to Europe, so I'm making a huge leap of faith here, but you watch them on TV, you see what you see, they seem to be getting away from penultimate discussion. They're talking about carrying as much speed to that plan as possible, because again, we're looking at trying to create vertical velocities. Plyometrics have been considered to provide event-specific training, talking about series elastic components and a stretch shortening cycle. The improvement comes from the counter movement prior to concentric contraction. However, again, the contact times do not reflect what you see in event-specific. So let's talk about stretch shortening cycles. Stretch shortening cycle, human movement preceded by a counter movement, stretching the muscle tendon unit prior to shortening, enhancing the following move. You apply force to the ground, it comes back to you. The stretch being, in this case, the Achilles tendon stretches, stores, and releases the energy. I talk to kids, the last couple of years I've lectured at Nike High School Nationals, and I take the high jump kids, and the first thing I do with them is go over to the long jump pit, and they're like, what the hell is this bald-headed guy doing? I bring a tent stake with me. I love imagery with young kids. I say, any of you ever been camping? You ever pitch a tent? Yeah. Some of the city kids maybe not, but they understand the concept. I say, well, you get out to the woods one night and you got to pitch a tent, and you got all the equipment except you don't have a mallet or a hammer. You're going to drive that tent stake with your toe or with your heel. Some lights go off, sometimes nobody's home. Okay, take a hypothetical of adding speed to a runner, to a jumper's approach. Somebody's jumping, running, jumping, everything's fine. We speed them up. Lacking sufficient eccentric strength to prevent that buckle at the knee, the addition of speed would require limiting the range of motion if they don't have the strength to create that vertical velocity. It's important that they apply force as quickly as possible while doing so over the greatest possible range of motion. Stiffness is a really cool concept. Any of you went to level 2, 3 last year, heard Franz Bosch speak to the subject? I have a much simpler view of it. That's stiffness in my world. You want to be the golf ball or the beach ball? If I walk into a 6th grade class or a junior high class or a high school class and I have a beach ball in one hand, a golf ball in the other hand, and I'm standing on a tile floor, just to help me enhance the imagery here, I tell the kids, I'm going to drop them, which one's going to bounce higher? Well, I'm dropping them from the same height, you know, mass and surface area notwithstanding. You know, kid logic would tell you the big ball, you know, it's more compliant. That big beach ball should bounce back up higher. That little tiny hard as a rock golf ball beats it every time. So what's the efficient application? And it comes from that greater stiffness. Craig's my mentor and godfather in the sport. I was out at his place at BYU the end of May, and I was talking about this presentation that I was giving. He says, you know, I got something really good on that. You know, you might take a look at it. And so I'm borrowing from Dr. Barr's publication in Peak Performance. Muscle stiffness, neural driven, not just strength related, speed and preferential recruitment. Tendon stiffness, by training collagen crosslinks, you will stiffen tendons. One thing to keep in mind when you're working with females, relaxin inhibits collagen and peaks about the 14th day of the cycle, okay? And then, quote, also at time of delivery. There's been enough studies out there now, especially NCAA basketball players, we're looking at ACL, MCL, that sort of thing, and there has been a correlation drawn between incident of knees blowing out and where that woman was in her monthly cycle. Relaxin causes the joint laxity. Active stiffness, activating muscles at optimal time. Contraction begins before ground contact. Repeat activity enhances myelin density. Did anybody see the New York Times article on myelin? Great article. Somebody went over to Russia and wondered how it is that the Russians keep cranking out superstars in tennis. And what they found was repetitive performance of exercise. And then that author came back to the States and found a doctor and discussed it with him, and the doctor spoke about myelin. And repetitive training, basically, I'm paraphrasing the article and probably interjecting my own interpretation a little bit. Repeat training insulates the wiring so you get a stronger signal to and from, which gives you better response, is the simplest way of putting it, which goes really well with what I talked about, dosage consistently at rate of speed. Passive stiffness, tentin is if I'm not mistaken, the longest contractile protein in the body. It's found in fast twitch muscle, it's shorter, and you train it, and also for passive stiffness, you train to increase collagen crosslinks. Training passive stiffness. Plyometrics obviously will play a role, as well as slight downhill running. There are facilities, I know of 2 right now, on the university level who are putting in moderate decline running surfaces. And I mean moderate. If you think about it, that picture is basically 100 meters straight, and that hurdle is a great reference, is why I'm using the picture. If you look real sharp, you'll see a hurdle right here. How high does a hurdle go? 42 inches maybe? So you're looking at a 42-inch start to track surface within 100 meters. So we're talking about 2%. It's not a lot. And you don't want it to be a greater decline. Okay?